Hello, we are StoryBeards, is the name that we're going with. My name is Zach, and this is.
I'm Chris. Zach and I have been friends since we knew each other since preschool and really became friends throughout middle school and high school.
Yeah, maybe
And
like late elementary on,
yeah,
especially middle school age.
yeah, middle school, high school, and have stayed friends all these years. And we find ourselves just talking about stories and talking about characters and movies and TV
Mhm.
shows and just um, love it and think that we just want to highlight just the great things and the great stories that are being told and the characters that we connect with.
Yeah,
So
agreed.
we figured, hey, we talk about this till 3 a.m. most nights anyway, so let's record some of it and have some fun with it. So we want to stay positive and go ahead and just kind of highlight for each other of just, hey, the things that we've been watching and what we've really been liking and getting from it, and just bringing each other things that the other person hasn't seen,
Yeah,
as well as going over good things that just bring us joy, like Captain America wielding Mjolnir.
it
Still brings
still
tears.
makes me cheer and scream inside and out loud. Yeah, no, totally agreed. And it was a cool, like, it had been on my mind for a while to do something like this, by myself, and still is. But this was great. Of like, hey, yeah, let's do this, make it our own. And if we do stuff, by ourselves, podcast or YouTube
Yeah,
channel wise, I've always been encouraged by yourself and other friends to like, hey, you should do something like this. You should do a podcast. But then it was such an awesome, like, perfect timing and a great offer and something I agreed
yeah,
with and felt the same about, like, to highlight just kind of hidden gems. And even if, both of us talking about it, like if we did something by ourselves, we would want it to be that same kind of feel of a
yeah,
conversation, like
yeah,
conversational, even if it's just one of us in front of a camera, it'd be a conversation with, the one person watching or whatever,
yeah,
and but but yeah, like just we've had great conversations and have connected about storytelling in many forms, especially film. So yeah, agreed. So
yeah.
what's our topic today, or do we want to talk a little more about what we expect to kind of play around with future episodes?
I'll talk a little bit about just kind of like our expectations of what we want to do. So we want to kind of like highlight either like specific movies or specific characters within movies, of like even some movies that we would look at and objectively say, this wasn't a great movie, but this one character we
Hmm.
really loved because we understood the heartbeat of that character, and maybe it was even just like perfect casting of like they
Yeah,
put the perfect person in that role that really just embodied that character. I
yeah,
mean, the main thing is like there's so many channels out there that are just like, hey, we're going to break down how they did all of this filming, how they did all this character design, and getting into the minutia or getting very critical of movies. And that's
hmm,
kind of not what we can do that, but we kind of want to stay again on the positive side and just talk
yeah,
about, hey, these are the things that we love, and we want to
yeah,
invite others to love the same things, and
yeah,
to see the joy and the beauty in things that sometimes gets kind of thrown to the side. Just like
yeah,
we'll talk about this movie definitely later on in an episode, but Hot Rod. It is not
hmm,
a great movie by any means, but I love it, and it
yeah,
brings me joy every single time.
yeah,
I was watching it a little bit earlier tonight, and just the part where he says to Elsa Fisher's character of like, "You look pretty." What did you say? Uh, you look shitty, and like runs away. It's like there's little moments like that where it's just so perfect.
yeah,
But we're gonna talk about some other things tonight. So tonight we're both gonna highlight like one hero that we've just enjoyed seeing throughout their movies or TV shows, and just kind of the arc and who they've had play it, and just the heart of that hero, and what we really liked about that. So Zach, I know you wanted to go ahead and kick it off.
sure. Yeah, sounds good. Tagging along with that and then launching it into the subject. So yeah, in general, and agreeing with what you're saying, yeah, highlights, hidden gems, and personal impact, I
Yeah.
guess, is and sharing it with each other and with whoever, and appreciating go into this another time too. But over each conversation, yeah, we appreciate each other's differences and similarities in how we watch movies and just kind of celebrating that as
Hmm.
well. And yeah, and just how a specific character, a specific movie could be about a specific character, be so specific, but that makes it so universal. That's probably another conversation, but yeah. So launching into so the evolution of this kind of topic was first we were kicking it around three characters. Then we're like, let's focus it on one. When it was three, it was one action hero, one comedy character from comedy,
Hmm.
one character from a drama, and I picked I had like a list of 10 or more in each, whittled it down to like four or five, whittled that down to one. Tonight I'm going with Indiana Jones, made perfect and famous
Are we talking
by.
about just the three movies of Indiana Jones that we recognize? Or are
Oh,
we adding in?
that's all that there. No, that's all that there is.
Yeah,
No,
yeah. There's
all
only
four,
three
but
movies.
with
Yeah.
there's only three. Yeah, well, I don't know what you're talking about. There's a fifth one coming out that is actually the fourth. No, including that one too, and that goes with what we're saying, like, not wanting to be too critical, but also allowing ourselves, like, no, we can dislike something.
Yeah.
But at the same time, like, yeah, going into, like, launching right into it, I enjoy this character in a movie in the franchise that like compared to the others,
Hmm.
I don't really, it's not the best, but I'm still just happy that there, to see a movie with this character and this actor and
Yeah.
this director, this team this concept that I just love. Even the movie that shall not be named. But yeah, in the Indiana Jones trilogy, and I'll talk about that one too a little bit probably. Um, I uh, I just yeah, it's such a. Do you want to say your character and then I'll keep talking about mine, or
No, no.
I'll
We'll
talk a
do
bit and
your
then we'll get
character
into
and
yours.
then we'll do mine
Yeah,
after. Yeah.
cool. Yeah, Indiana Jones, man, and especially the first three movies. Get a little into the fourth. It's famous to bust on it, but like we
Yeah.
were saying, like we want to focus on. It's easy to just be like, oh, this is so terrible. Oh, all the prequels of Star Wars, meh. And you can have your gripes and complaints and
Yeah, but
all
pod
that,
racing was
but
awesome. No matter what, pod racing was awesome.
pod
And
racing is impressive. And
my nuclear fallout shelter is just a refrigerator.
jumping right back to attacking the fourth one. No, but just that character is still endearing and
Yeah.
enduring, and even in the backdrop of something that just didn't work 100% for me personally, and maybe for
Yeah.
others. But no, just still like movies are hard to make,
They are.
and just like and still this character is just one of my absolute favorite characters, one of my absolute favorite actors, one of my absolute favorite like creative teams. George Lucas and Steven Spielberg obviously just make fabulous stuff separately and together, and even that the fourth one is like a celebration of friendship. It was just like
Yeah.
that wasn't necessary. That was a creative collaboration. The concept, the idea of some of the plot, the aliens, the this, that was like those two friends just talking about it. That's a direction one of the friends wanted to go, and the other friend was like, "All right, let's try it."
Yeah.
Like that's just like a celebration of their friendship too, and it's a creative process. It's and expensive. But it's just like
Yeah.
yeah, there were good things about it, and especially the character, and there were cool. Yeah, and that's touching on what we were saying earlier. You can pick something out, like each, like we watch movies similarly in that
Yeah.
we can take it at face value. We can pick something it does well. We can learn from something. You learn something about yourself of like, oh, I didn't like this. I didn't respond to this because of this.
Yeah.
Or like, oh, the strength of this movie is the the pacing, but it kind
Yeah.
of falters at this. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
So the strength of
And
that, like Spielberg's sensibilities shine through it, like
yeah.
just the way he shoots a film, the famous, like, the Spielberg oneer, like
Yeah.
the one takes, like, kind of made, like, like especially popular by a few more recent movies. Like, he was always good at just doing that, just a long,
Yeah.
sustained, difficult take, and just his, yeah,
And
his
as
eye
and
is
as far
still
as a
just
hero
enduring.
goes, like Indiana Jones has always been great, and especially because it's before the time where they had like Sylvester Stallone and like all the like Arnold
Different
Schwarzeneggers of
kind of
like
action
you
hero.
need to
Yeah,
be
it's a
like
different
buff. It
flavor.
was like this
Yeah,
is your everyman action hero that had real
yeah,
fears and struggles of like just
exactly.
the whole like being afraid of snakes. Like
Yeah, like that's what I was about
yeah.
to. Yeah, that's perfect. Like we've talked about before, and like that's what makes it interesting. We'll talk about probably a villain will probably be a subject or several.
Yeah.
But a good villain is one you really understand, and a good protagonist is
Hmm.
one who's very flawed, like
Yeah.
often. Or and then there's too the kind of he's a good mix. Like there's stylistic choice and the different kinds of heroes in different eras of film, different genres. The '70s like vigilante film,
Hmm.
or the like certain films. I'm trying to think of an example, but you kind of I think you know what I'm saying. Like a static character.
Yeah.
Like I think Indiana Jones is a great blend of dynamic and static. Like he learns
Yeah.
stuff, but he's always him. But he's still vulnerable and flawed. He grows throughout each story.
Yeah, and like
But
juxtaposing him
he
to like
stays
James
himself.
Bond, where like James
Yeah,
Bond is more of the static, he never
he's
changes.
yeah, except until maybe the latest iterations,
Yeah,
but a little bit. But he's still like it's just him.
yeah,
He always has the answers. He always like he's always cool. Like Blade in the
hmm,
first Blade, he was just always a badass.
yeah,
And Indiana Jones is always cool, but he gets hurt. Like he gets, Jackie Chan made that perfect and famous, like getting hurt and
yeah,
it being like funny and like there's real stakes, like and even doing, I think I don't know, ratio of I don't know how many stunts, he did or didn't do, Harrison Ford, but you can see his face a lot and he's
yeah.
involved a lot. And just the character itself is classic, that genre is classic, that,
And if he wasn't up for a stunt, you still came out with a memorable take because he
yeah,
wasn't up for that fight scene. And so
yes,
what did they like?
famously. Yeah, everyone
Oh,
knows
just pull
about
it out
that.
and shoot
Yeah.
him. Like it was
Yeah, and that is
fantastic.
perfect. Yeah, he
Yeah,
had like horrible stomach problems or something, and
yeah,
he that just made it perfect. And that's I'm kind of all over the place right now, but it's so there's just so much you can talk about. So backing up a little bit maybe, but just I don't know. Just I remember, yeah, I grew up on it. Indiana Jones. I think the first one. When did the first one come out? I should have looked it up. I mean, the beauty of
uh,
like like I'm kind of surprised sometimes, like movies that I hold dear, from my childhood. I'm
mhm.
surprised that it was kind of like, they came out when I was born or
Yeah,
before, but I still claim them as, no, this is mine. This is my own,
yeah.
and like, but that's, beauty of VHS, but it was still just so like, I grew up watching these.
Yeah,
Like I just grew up on them. It became just foundational. My love of storytelling, film, even just kind of I guess jumping into like kind of some of the personal impact, um just how it taps into that
yeah,
sense of adventure, that boyhood, like just
yeah,
like a cool, vulnerable in a way person, like he can get hurt but he always comes back at the last minute, and he needs saving, like
yeah.
he needs help, he has friends, he has Sala played perfectly by I'm gonna blank on his name. It's terrible for a podcast
Sean
and a video,
Connery.
but no, that's
Oh,
his
no,
dad.
that's his dad. Yeah, yeah.
Sala in each, the first in the Raiders, and he's not in the second one. He's in the Last Crusade as well. He played Gimli as well. Um,
Oh, that guy. Yeah, yeah. I
right,
can't remember his name though.
Jonathan Rice Davies. Jonathan Rice
Maybe,
Davies. I believe so.
maybe. Okay.
Forgiveness, please, if it's if I'm wrong. Uh, but no, but yeah,
Yeah,
his these again, like he's an interesting character by himself. Harrison Ford, he's fleshed out well. He, kind of. face value, but there's nuance. Like you see, what you see
Hmm.
is what you get. He's like a
Yeah.
quintessential action hero, but like you said, it's not. It's a different kind of action hero. It's separate, kind of from that genre of just like kill them all, body count, just this
Yeah.
massive like just like cool one-liners. Like there's still that snappy,
Well,
funny
and
stuff,
always
but
going
he
after
was he
something,
was
not just trying to kill people. It was
yeah, he was
he had an
vulnerable. He had a
overarching
code.
goal above it, and
Yeah,
yeah,
that was for the most part. Again, it's as per the genre, there's still action, there's still that,
yeah,
but it was more self-defense. It's not a revenge tale.
yeah,
There were aspects of certain things. When his father was in danger, that made it more personal,
hmm
and made him a little more like unleash a little bit. The famous like, "Don't call me Junior." I
yeah.
can't believe what you did. But
From a guy that
yeah,
was about the same age playing his father.
yes. But yeah, just awesome. I love Indiana
Yeah,
Jones. That's a perfect blend when we're thinking about the topic. Like, okay, what are we looking at? Like because we were bouncing around all kinds of ideas.
yeah,
Of
yeah.
course, not honorable mentions in the sense that any less than like I love them just as much, but it was like the perfect things lined up for this to
Hmm.
be a good topic. But say something like Aragorn. I friggin'
Oh
love
yeah,
Aragorn. I love Viggo Mortensen's.
he
He
did
brought him
it.
to life
He
on the
was
big screen.
perfect for that.
But that's also
Yeah.
but that is a perfect combination of a character that existed, but
Hmm.
then what he did with that character, it's still his,
Yeah.
and it's still an original take on literature, character from literature. But Indiana Jones too is influenced by so many things. Again, it's
Hmm.
that same like where it's this creative like inspirational like cycle, like we're inspired and it
Yeah.
captures something like innate, that sense of adventure. And that's part of what you know uh Spielberg and Lucas, they grew up on those radio serials. They grew up on like Flash Gordon
Yeah.
and like that kind of stuff, and it just that just took that into account and
And then
just like
Indiana Jones has become an archetype for other things. Like
yeah,
there's
yeah, and it was based on other archetypes, but it
yeah,
became its own thing. It was based on these other classic things, radio shows and like this
yeah.
that it was already like a genre, but kind of helped become its own, further the genre, become its own thing, and just yeah, just so classic and yeah, foundational, super quotable, foundational in
Yeah.
my kind of journey with movies. Just something I always loved growing up. It just really taps into um, just something very real, just that sense of adventure, that code of honor, that so much in it, even iconic scenes like in the Last Crusade, like the
Hmm.
the trials at the end, even just maybe could be another topic too. Like we threw that around of like what's something that has been ins- not the word inspirational is one word,
Hmm.
but like there's just something impactful like for
Yeah.
us on a personal level. Even so many scenes from those films, like I often think in movie that about
Yeah.
me, and we're similar, and like key moments in our lives, like there's and when sometimes a movie like just it just cheers you up because it's just funny, or it's just the diverting, or all the things like you see parallels in it in your own life, or you're encouraged by it, or just a scene from it like just speaks to you about something like the something
Hmm.
symbolic or whatever. But so much in that has just so yeah, like the you might not be able to get it into words right. It sounds cheesy, like it's not just like reductive, like oh that leap of faith, but that test, the leap
Hmm.
of faith at the
Yeah.
end, even just that word picture and or that picture, that visual, and that scene, the music, everything, just like
Yeah.
that concept and what that character was going through that you can empathize with, like that has just been in the back of my mind or in the forefront so many crucial moments in my life. Like it might sound silly to say, but not really, because you know how like
Yeah.
impactful movies can be. Like it's storytelling.
Yeah.
It is personal. It is you know universal or and unique and personal, and like at different moments in your life certain things will stand out to you. But yeah, even just that, I just still just love that, you know, love
Yeah.
that image, because so much in your like of just that he's taking a breath, like just that moment of silence. The music stops, perfectly edited and orchestrated, perfectly acted. He's just like desperate,
Yeah.
like takes a step, and then the triumphant, swell of John Williams' score. It is such a like
I
that just sticks with you. And the funny stuff, like
Yeah.
like some of my favorite things to quote is just Harrison Ford saying like one word at a time to the villains at the beginning of Temple of Doom, or like the banter between him and Short Round.
Yeah.
It's just perfect. It's some of the most, and connecting with our lifelong friends, Tim and Adina, like
Hmm.
just like
Yeah.
that's famous, the quoting, you connect with certain people, like you just, oh yeah, you love this movie too, yeah, like it's
Yeah.
deeply inside and a part of me, and you connect with people on that level, and all you have to do is just be like Short Round, Lao Shay, coming to hard indeed, like it just, yeah, it just, all it takes is, or like you
Yeah.
said from Hot Rod, just like
Yeah.
what way whiskey, like there's it's just, yeah, it's a lot of
Yeah.
fun to connect over something as silly as that, but it's, yeah.
Yeah.
uh I was Steve, I always forget that Dan Aykroyd was in Temple of Doom. The fun fact, he
Oh,
was
that's
the,
right. Yeah.
yeah, and that's what our mutual friend likes. That's like one of his favorite lines.
Yeah.
You will be with something with live poultry.
Yeah.
That's another little fun. Like Spielberg is great with those random cameos. Like
Yeah.
Hook, there's a bunch of weird, excellent cameos in that. That's another like, you
Oh, that's
know,
a.
yeah,
I mean,
that's,
that was a childhood movie for us. Like,
yeah, we're probably going to talk
yeah.
about that eventually. That was like, yeah, hands
Yeah.
down one of my absolute favorites as well. And a special, like, yeah, it gets Indiana Jones, Hook, they're like
Yeah.
elevated, like just there's something special about them, to me personally, to us personally. But yeah, uh, Harrison Ford is just awesome, and
Yeah.
is that's such an excellent era of certain kinds of action heroes, certain kinds of
Yeah.
what, actors, that it seems, and that way of filmmaking, like creating these big sets
Yeah.
inside a giant like
And
warehouse of a
not being
studio,
able to rely on CGI,
and
so they had
filming
to
on
do so
location.
many
Yeah,
things practically,
in
which
camera. Yeah,
that I mean, when you go to the fourth one, that is the main criticism, is that the CGI just doesn't look as good as doing things practically. Like, I didn't have an issue with the story. The story to me was like, oh, okay, and like, yeah, we make fun of like surviving a nuclear blast in a fridge, but Indiana Jones was always campy. Like,
yeah.
it
There's
always had
always a
that
level of,
campiness to it.
he's going to survive that kind of movie.
Right.
He's the main character.
Yeah,
There's not,
and it
he's
was
not
like
going to
a
die yet. You know.
it was a mix of like Indiana Jones and Lethal Weapon, like Murtaugh, if I'm getting too old for this. And like, I always enjoyed that aspect. Like,
Yeah.
the fourth one gets a bad rap because of some of the CGI stuff, and because they moved it up like a decade or two to try to make it like Grease, and like having Shia LaBeouf or whatever like in it, being like, West Side Story almost, with like some of the stuff, and it's just like that stuff kind of took away from like the good side to that movie, and Harrison Ford still did a good job with that.
Yeah. Oh yeah.
um it's just, they were trying to rely on something that Steven Spielberg had great, uh great interactions with CGI, even like Jurassic Park,
Oh goodness gracious.
almost
Yeah.
what, a
Uh,
decade or so,
it
more than
still
a
looks
decade
amazing.
before.
Yeah.
But
And
like,
that, yeah.
the T-Rex running with CGI in that, like, there's
Yeah.
a Netflix show, The Movies That Made Us, that like talks about like some of the CGI stuff that they did for like the walking and the running, because that was all supposed to be
Yeah.
like stop motion, and like, just, way ahead of its time.
Yeah.
And
Oh yeah.
being able to say, okay, well, he did that like probably 12 years before the fourth Indiana Jones, and then they have Shia LaBeouf like going through and swinging, where like it just doesn't
Oh, the
look
monkey
good.
thing
The
is
monkey
like
thing,
famously like torn apart.
right?
Yeah.
But like, there's still that campiness and that fun to it, which is
Yeah.
why it was still good, and it was still good for the character. Like,
Yeah.
I didn't
Yeah.
ever think that
Highlighting
it
the character.
dishonored the character it
No,
still honored
yeah,
who
it's
Indiana
still,
Jones was.
yeah, exactly. Still very Indiana Jonesy. Still the iconic, like that profile. The you can't see his face, but you see the hat,
Yeah.
and yeah, just that's something I was thinking about too. Like just excellent, like obviously excellent, like production
Hmm.
design all around from the icon, made iconic. It's I don't know. Halloween and cosplay is proof that there's just some excellent like cosplay for sure, some excellent like costumes and tributes and that kind of thing. But there is something about like, yeah, this actor brought this to life. Like
Yeah.
he looks good in that jacket. Like by itself, it's a jacket, it's a hat, but
Yeah.
it is now iconic because of the presence and what he brought to it. Like there's still not taking away from anything. Like there's some awesome like fan made stuff,
Yeah.
and it's fun to celebrate that. But like yeah, like he brought that to it. I was watching uh, special features from
Hmm.
the Chris Nolan Batman series, and they showed some screen tests from other actors, and then Christian Bale, and yeah, not like they're excellent performances, and they were looking
Yeah.
at some like for like a regular suit for someone who they could cast as almost two characters at once.
Hmm.
It'll circle back around to Indiana Jones, but to kind of bring that same point of like just the gravity and the atmosphere that an actor can bring to a
Yeah.
role. Like there are also other dudes that did a great job, like as Bruce Wayne and or as Batman. But Christian Bale had this like way about him as both
Yeah.
separately. But he just brought this gravitas to it. And they I think they borrowed, that was a fun fact, like I think they borrowed like the Val Kilmer era like Batman suit for them to screen test in, and had Amy Adams off camera but interacting with them.
Okay.
Like yeah, like just I think she was just got a like the casting director or director like just kind of a favor. She was in the area, or just
Hmm.
kind of like was yeah, just someone like to bring that kind
Yeah.
of excellent interaction with it. And just yeah, I just thought it was cool to see. Like it's cool to see the development of it. But then yeah, like circle back around Indiana Jones, just what a nonchalance and effortlessness, but this confidence, this presence that Harrison Ford just has. And he's one of those
Yeah.
actors that um, there's you don't always need, he's not necessarily a chameleon, but he brings something new and different to each character and
Hmm.
makes that character come alive. Like dudes like, Sam Elliott, like he's
Yeah.
always Sam Elliott. Clint Eastwood is always Clint Eastwood. Harrison Ford is always Harrison Ford, but he disappears. He's Indiana Jones. Like
Yeah.
he disappeared enough. And Indiana Jones but he brought his own whatever, like, Han Solo, like
Yeah.
lovable scoundrel. Like he brings this, that's just such a classic, that era, like
Yeah.
from even like kind of golden age into like that action hero age, like Air Force One, get off my plane, like to like right up there with his
Yeah.
contemporaries, like the Stallones and the Schwarzeneggers and whatever, like that's still action hero stuff, but this classic, Robert Redford, Paul
Hmm.
Newman, and even from before, this classic, even kind
Yeah.
of Humphrey Bogart coolness, like just this like this calmness, but again the vulnerability, the emotion, like real, like this passionate, compassionate, like anger, like everything. Like he brought this vulnerability and this flawed like character that could be taught, could learn, but he stayed himself throughout each one. And yeah, growing up, yeah, I don't necessarily have a favorite. I'll still, the fourth is still enjoyable. I still watch
Hmm.
it every now and then when I have a hankering for, it's a series I rewatch frequently. Uh, uh, like along with Lord of the Rings, I'm
Yeah.
watching those again. Like I try to watch that once a year. Band of Brothers, like I'll try to watch that at least once a year, just whenever I feel like it. It's just sometimes to study, sometimes to have on in the background, sometimes just to watch for fun. You always gain something new, but it's a fun one to always
Yeah.
revisit. And I'll still watch the fourth, of course, but especially the first three. I grew up on them. And that's the thing too. Like even some of the Star Wars, it's famous. It's fun to bust on maybe some of the new ones, but
Hmm.
like I'm just happy to be watching a property that I, is something I loved growing up. I'm just happy to be
Yeah.
seeing it again in the theater. So when, I'm excited and nervous about, little tidbits I hear about the fifth, Indiana Jones, that it's happening. Like, but this is how it works. They make
Yeah.
Indiana Jones, they make Star Wars. I'm watching it. You know what I mean? Like, I'm
Hmm.
gonna watch it. I'm gonna enjoy it. But yeah, the first three, just as a trilogy, just the more I watch them over the years, each time, it's like, man, this really works as an entire trilogy. And was each one was in a it sounds silly to say, oh, groundbreaking, or it sounds silly to
Yeah.
throw that around, but they really were. Like, that's a fun fact. You might know this. In the first Raiders of the Lost Ark, and then especially Temple of Doom, was the tipping point for the PG-13 rating.
Hmm.
There was no PG-13. There were PG. The first one that was
Gremlins,
then
I think, was the first PG-13 movie.
Red Dawn, I think.
Oh, Red
Gremlins,
Dawn. Okay,
yeah, Red Dawn. That was
because that was the first one that had blood.
1984.
Yeah.
Yeah, so that was 1984, and that was like right after that. So I think Temple of Doom was 83, or that was 84 as well, but just
Okay.
like a month or more ahead, a little bit ahead of, a few months or so ahead of Red Dawn, something like that. But that like helped prompt, Raiders of the Lost Ark too. I
Yeah.
think helped prompt like kind of buzz about it. Uh, but um, but yeah, I just thought that was funny. But that was like, he was each one is so different, and but still like the character shines through. It's himself, but it develops, and each one tries different things. Like
Yeah.
early Spielberg, he just goes for it. Like especially Temple of Doom, he just went for it. He
Yeah.
made it just intense. Like it's intense. Like it was scary as a kid, and it's still like freaky. And sometimes you revisit movies, you loved as a kid, and you're like, I watched this.
Yeah.
Wow, like I turned out great. But no, it's just awesome. Like it's just
Yeah.
bonkers, that over the top, off the wall, and like I tend to, like the dark stuff is interesting, and
It is.
even like, and I forget, like in Raiders of the Lost Ark, they when the people approach him to go on that expedition, and in his kind of alter ego, like as the professor, like they mention that he's a uh, part of his expertise is the occult. Then they kind of glaze over that.
Hmm.
You forget that, and then they brought that back full circle in Raiders of the Lost Ark. Oh, sorry, in Temple of Doom, and it was just yeah, each one is excellent, and
Yeah.
I just love that they tried just different things, and I love that time period. Like even that was cool. Like they bumped it up a couple of decades. Like they tried to catch up, whatever that was, the 50s, whatever kind of
Yeah.
greaser motorcycles, that era. But it was still like still fits within that kind of
Yeah.
iconography, that kind of era, leather jackets and suits and professors and archaeologies and all
And they
that.
went down to
But
South America and found Nazis again, right? So I can't.
Nazis,
I can't remember.
Russians, it's all the same. It was the
I can't
Russians.
remember.
Yeah,
Oh, it was the Russians in that one.
it was the Russians. But yeah, but no, but even just that, the time period I love too.
Yeah.
Like I love the style, just the art from Art Deco, and like and then just the whole just
Yeah.
old timey, the cars, everything. Like it's disintegrating into not saying intelligently just because I'm just remembering it. I just want to go watch them and just enjoy it. But
Yeah.
there's just something about it. It just struck all these notes. That's just yeah. They're a ton of fun. I love the character. It's yeah. Growing up, my favorite was Last Crusade. But just more and more, I love each of them. I've always loved each of them, but more and
Yeah.
more, it's just it really stands out as a really like near perfect as a trilogy. Like
Yeah.
they each complement each other. They're standalone. They further just the world and the character. They're excellent. Just it's just excellent storytelling. Just fun big movies. That's just like they don't sound like an old man when it's like they don't
They
make
don't make it
movies
like
like
they
that
used
anymore.
to.
But they don't. Like they do, but they don't. There's
Yeah.
still movies that tap into that, and it's okay that it's changing and all that. And there still are big like excellent productions, but there's just something about it that it stands out, and
Yeah.
it was foundational in filmmaking, foundational in my storytelling, story enjoying life and journey. Yeah, and then love Last Crusade. One of my absolute favorites. All three of my absolute favorites. One of my favorite characters. One of my favorite actors. One of my favorite directors. I got a lot of favorites, but each of them I really, really, really
You're like
very
Flight of the
much
Concords of
feel it.
like,
Yeah.
yeah, she was the one. Yeah, she was another one. Yeah, she was one too. It's like, well, how many ones have you had? I've had 3.
But yeah. Growing up, Last Crusade. Movie wise as a whole, like probably craft wise,
Mm-hmm.
probably Raiders of the Lost Ark stands out for me. And then just Temple of Doom is just
Yeah.
fun, like, and over the top and iconic. I remember playing the arcade game version of that. Could never get past like the first little bit. Uh, like the Molaram like disappears into the thing, and it's the Anyway, like that's they should have made that into a better video game, but I remember it still being exciting. You remember Hitaway Park? The
No.
it was a batting cage, and they had some like arcade as well.
Okay.
Uh,
Was that up in Glasgow area?
I think so.
Okay.
We grew up in Delaware. Viewer.
Yeah.
And iconic. Remember hiding behind my brother during the scary scenes, and when we wanted to freak each other out, just start doing the Kalima, and just so quotable. Every single one of those 3 movies, very quotable. And yeah, that's I'm sure I have more to say, but moving on to yours.
All right. So my pick is Wolverine. So like growing up, it was, Saturday morning cartoons was watching the X-Men.
Same.
And so that was always massive to me. I love Gambit. I love Wolverine.
Same.
And
As you know.
the craziest thing is that the cartoon was the only thing besides the comics that could actually pull off the Dark Phoenix saga. Like,
Yes,
they did such a good job in that cartoon.
Did a great job of
covering that.
Yeah.
But it gets more towards like the motivations of that character that I love, and so something that I remember from college. So Zach and I both went to different schools, but we both went to Bible schools, and so when they talked to us about like how do you interpret scripture and stuff like that, one of the things that they always reminded us in our classes was, don't miss the human element. Always remember the human element and put yourself in their shoes. That like if it says this person walked this far, well, how far is that? What's the farthest you've walked? Like try to put yourself in that mindset. And the older I get, the more I become, an old dad of like wanting to just watch things about World War II and the Revolutionary War and like understand the history and like the motivation behind it. Jan and I were watching, she got really big into the president, so she's been reading biographies on all the presidents and just fell in love with John Adams. And so we were watching the HBO miniseries for John Adams where Paul Giamatti plays him. Fantastic. But like understanding excellent. And getting back to like the Boston Massacre of like, it was 5 people. It's a tragic loss of life, but it was only 5 people, and it was 100+ people against like 15 British soldiers that were just trying to protect themselves, and someone kind of fell and fired, and just chaos ensued, and 5 people died. And looking at the background of that and thinking like, our second president of the United States defended these people because he believed in their right for trial and got them acquitted. And just like thinking about like the history of like this guy who's part of the heartbeat of the revolution, like believed, and like you start like seeing things in a different light the more that you like think through other people's lenses of how they look at things. And so like one of the lenses that Wolverine has always had is that protector. He's always been that defender of others, and always have loved that. It's always struck a heartbeat with me. He was that in the comics. He had more sides to him in the comics. They kind of narrowed down the scope of his character in the movies, but they kept that heartbeat of being there to protect others. And so like Man, X-Men 2 had, to me, the best Wolverine moment. And it's, when Stryker's men are coming to take the children away. And he just goes berserk mode. And he was always like that beast, but he always used it in a way, like when he was around others, to protect.
Yeah.
And then even when you get into like the Logan movie, which is my favorite that they had of that character,
Fantastic.
he put himself in isolation as a way to protect others. Because you even have, like, later on in that movie, it's like, bad things happen to people that I care about. The people that are around me die and I remain, and wanting to protect others. And like, just love that heartbeat. Obviously perfectly cast. I don't know how I could see anyone else besides Hugh Jackman play Logan
Yeah, it'd be interesting
in my
to see
lifetime. Like, I don't know.
with it.
I would see it because I love the character, but
Yeah.
Hugh Jackman was the perfect casting for that.
Very well done.
But oh my goodness, like, Logan, by and far my favorite. He still had, like, I was thinking about this because I watched a little bit earlier today, and thinking about that first scene when they're kind of setting it up that, like, he's hurt and, like, he's not his full self but still able to deal with people, but, like, he had the attitude walking out of that limo of, like, Zach and I both worked at camps with kids. The attitude that you have when you're confronting your kids and you're like, I don't really want to do anything here. Come on, guys, just go to bed. Like, like, not
like
wanting to go into that confrontation, knowing that he can win, he can throw around his weight. Just like,
even
come
then,
on,
like
guys.
at his kind of worst, like he's like getting old, and mutants are, the beginning of that, mutants are like marginalized, and but even then, just that fatherly, like, come on, I don't want to deal with this.
I don't want to hurt you. I don't want to kill anyone. Like,
but still that kind of fatherly, like, yeah.
It's like, you're doing it wrong. You're stripping the nuts. Like, you're not going to get anything from this. Come on, just don't damage the car. It's the same attitude that Tim would have with us when we do stupid stuff. I'm like, come on, guys. But yeah, like that. Like, I loved that scene. I love, the scene later on when he goes full berserk mode at the end. And everything that they did with that movie, from the soundtrack to even, like, the sound, the tracks that they used in the previews, because they used Kaleo. It was like right after I started listening to Kaleo, and I was like,
it was a great,
no, it was
an
absolutely
awesome
fantastic
song choice for the trailer. Yes.
And then, I mean, my experience with this, because I've told you about this, of, like, I went and saw it opening night, midnight showing, and I saw it with a whole bunch of friends, but all the friends that I went there with are, like, Avengers, Thor, like, mainstream Marvel, like, PG-13 friends that, like, they want to go and have a good time and see this excitement around, and all of them, like, had the same kind of reactions of like, it was just a little too gory for them, and I'm just sitting there, and they're just, like, shocked at me. I'm like, no, this is exactly what I expected. This is exactly what I wanted. And they're just like, what? I'm like, his superpower is healing, and he has knives that come out of his hands. It's gonna be up close and personal. I thought that was, all throughout the X-Men PG-13 versions, like X1 and X-Men, well, probably the first 3 movies, they didn't really show the blood, and they kind of, like, shielded the claws away of, like, you would see sparks, you wouldn't actually see them, like, penetrate things. The closest that you would have gotten would be, like, X-Men 2, where he hits the guy in the chest, so basically you just see his hands there, but you don't see, like, the claws go in. And then it was X-Men Wolverine's origin, which the great thing about that movie was the opening scene, like the opening cinematography that they did of him and Lee Stryker, like, playing throughout all the wars, and, like, having that brotherly bond was absolutely fantastic. the rest of it wasn't as good. Although Ryan Reynolds, before they made, when he was Deadpool but not made Deadpool, like when you take Deadpool and you take away the mouth from the Merc with the mouth, you've done something wrong. But like my main criticism with that movie was like the claws. Like they just looked absolutely terrible. And there's like a scene later on where like he's like slashing, like, was it like a fire escape that was coming at him for some reason, and like going and it just like looks so bad. And so having it to where the last movie and you had that up close and personal feel with everything, and having it look very gory but so good.
Yeah.
And
there's it almost like it can cheapen it sometimes when it's handled a certain way. Say even in the
Yeah.
PG-13 version, like you don't get the cost of it, and that's one
Yeah.
of the themes that Logan handled so well. And even with, yeah, it was violent, but the tone of the violence, it didn't glorify it. It
Yeah.
it was visceral, and you saw the cost. You saw his
Yeah.
reluctance, like you said in the beginning, to even engage in any violence. But you saw the cost of it. He did what was necessary to protect,
Yeah.
in that opening scene himself, and his livelihood, his job, which again was to protect the people he loved. He was trying to
Yeah.
earn money to take care of his family, which I'll let you continue with that. But yeah, like it was, yeah, that visceral. And as I love what I mean, he's didn't coin the phrase, but most recently I heard it, like the director of Joker
Mm-hmm.
and the Hangover movies. I'm blanking on the name, but I really love the way he said, as directors, you're purveyors of tone.
Yeah.
And yeah, the tone of the violence, the tone of Logan
Yeah.
was near perfect, and especially, yeah, like you were talking about the violence, it
Yeah.
was visceral, but I thought it was
It was
handled really well.
it was called for. It wasn't anything that was over
Yeah,
the top. It
it
wasn't
doesn't
the
glorify it. It's part of the character's life. Like
right.
he's known violence. What scared him was, I'll let you get into that. We talked
Yeah.
about that before. Like what scared him was different things. What scares
Yeah.
him is his loved ones, like
Yeah.
getting close to people and his loved ones paying for it.
Yeah.
So that's what was scary. He's used to violence. He's used to war.
Yeah.
He's like like a old samurai, like this
Yeah.
warrior, this old Western hero. Like he's used to that, but he's scared of you know
Yeah.
like he's used to being alone and
Because
fighting for his
throughout
life.
all the
But
films, you could even see of like every person that he got close to
yeah,
died, or he had to
yeah,
kill them. Like even though it wasn't a great movie X3, they at least got that right with like the ending of
yeah.
him having to kill Jean Grey.
Yeah, that was still
Um,
impactful.
that
Like,
was
yeah, it did
yeah.
not work as a film, but and I haven't seen it in forever. I should probably watch it again just to kind of, glean what they did. They did well.
Yeah.
But that, yeah, I remember that's still an iconic, like, that's, the
Yeah.
emotions kind of showed through
It's an
that. Like,
iconic
he's like,
sacrifice of
I
like
love you, and then, kills her because
having to
that's what,
kill the person that he
yeah,
loved to
yeah,
save the world essentially and save
yeah.
others.
In a sense,
Um,
save her, like
yeah,
from what was
from
happening. Yeah,
herself,
but
and
that
yeah,
was always been an essential part of who that character is. And
yeah,
yeah, and of course Hugh Jackman does it super well. Like
does a great
again,
job.
so,
Even
yeah,
with like Wolverine's origin, you have the woman that he was close to, that you know died there at the end. Like every single person that he would ever get close to, um, he always ends up, he's trying to protect him, but always kind of puts him in danger. He's kind of like um, a very violent version of Spider-Man. Like
mm,
Spider-Man's heartbeat is always kind of the same of like trying to protect those around him, and like Mary
mm,
Jane, um, and Uncle Ben, and just like it always just going wrong.
yeah,
Um,
kind of the classic superhero uh,
yeah,
problem, like protecting those you care about.
yeah,
Yeah,
yeah. Because I mean, Batman even dealt with it of like you wear the mask to protect others, not to protect yourself.
yeah,
From the Dark Knight Rises, when he was talking with
yeah,
um, Levitt's character, the guy that turned out to be Robin for some reason.
I liked that twist. I didn't
I
mind
know
it.
it
I
was
liked it.
Joseph Gordon-Levitt. I thought played a good character.
I
I
loved him
didn't.
in that role. Yeah, I
I
liked it.
actually didn't have a problem with that being a reveal as long as they weren't making a Robin movie.
No, yeah, I love that. He had no intention of making it any more. I love that it was open ended. That was
Yeah,
totally just the lost art of having an open ended ending with no intention of
of
continuing
making
it.
a sequel
Uh,
and trying to
yeah,
bring in money and just like letting things
yeah,
that to me is one of the lost arts of
yeah,
movies and TV shows. I've been watching Ted Lasso the last couple of weeks and watched the first two seasons,
yeah.
and from what I heard, they're only planning to do 3 seasons, which I love
I
that.
can, yeah, we were talking about that before. I
Yeah,
can appreciate that when there's a distinct
it's like, hey, we
beginning,
have a
middle,
story
end.
to
Yeah,
tell. This is the story, and
yeah,
writing it out. I mean, like, you have other things that are like drug on for years and years and years, where it's
yeah.
like Resident Evil. I like the first. I've watched most of them. The first one I actually really liked. I've always loved zombie movies. You know that I love the zombie genre.
Mm.
Um, but yeah, like the more and more they keep going into them, it's like, what is the point? These aren't. They're all straight to video now. What is even the point of this? Um, but
Yeah,
yeah, Logan will always have a very very high place in my heart of
same.
the character, the way they told the story, the fact that they did a rated R movie not for the purpose of showing violence, but for the purpose
Yeah,
of dealing with adult
it served the
themes.
story. Yeah,
Um,
that served the story.
of
That was they were open about that. Of like,
yeah,
we're not going to do R rated just for the heck of it.
yeah,
Like I really appreciated that.
yeah. So that that is the one that I wanted to highlight. And Hugh Jackman, you need to come back and be Wolverine again. Now that it's in the MCU, because if they're gonna bring Wolverine in, it can really only be you.
I'm curious to
Yeah,
see where they take it. I mean, I always like I do appreciate. I think I imagine they would handle it well. Of like, maybe even like similar to. I mean, it'd be different, like a different similar to like say Captain America,
yeah,
that transitioning to a different character or a different actor. This would be different, like because it'd be the same character but a different actor, like kind of thing. But I
yeah.
think, yeah, it seems like yeah, his Hugh
And
Jackman as a character is like cemented and respected enough that
yeah,
it wouldn't be
and it
trying
was
to replace it wouldn't be a replacement. It would be another
yeah,
iteration.
and
And
it
I
was a
think that would be
beautiful
understood.
it
Yeah.
was a beautiful ending for him and Logan of like
Yeah.
putting
Yeah.
like letting the character go at the top. Like they're
Yeah.
I couldn't imagine, especially because it was such a weird movie because like if you know the storyline, it's supposed to be him and Hawkeye, but Fox had the rights to that, and Hawkeye
Oh, yeah, yeah.
was with Disney and Marvel, and like
Okay.
there's supposed to be like the Hulk and stuff like that in there. So like
Yeah.
it's a weird mashing of they basically took the idea of like
You're saying
old man
from
Logan
the
from
graphic
the
novel
old
Old
man
Man
Logan.
Logan.
Yeah, yeah,
Yeah.
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 So they kind of like took those ideas,
Yeah.
but like
I like how they
made it
still
in a
took
way
the
that
tone of that
worked.
though, and yeah,
Yeah,
and that
yeah,
works well anyway, in that they make it, it makes it its own thing. You draw
yeah,
from like, yeah, the Chris Nolan Batman's like drew from,
yeah,
Frank Miller's Dark Knight Returns and others, but they made it its own thing. And each of those, like you're saying, like not dragging it out, you can trust certain filmmakers to like, if there's a story to tell, they will continue telling it,
yeah,
and they will, try their best to end it well, like, and not just
yeah,
Chris Nolan's not just going to keep going. Mangold's another one that, like, when he has a story to tell, he'll tell it and he'll tell it well, not just to draw it out. So
yeah,
yeah, it like there is something comforting, like when we first heard about Logan, years ago before any teaser trailers came out,
yeah,
like you see names attached to it and you're like, yes,
yeah,
this has the potential to be done extremely well, and it was
yeah.
executed like near perfectly. And I love
The
the whole
the
Western
western,
thing.
yeah, the western
Yeah,
motif
man,
throughout it
like
was so well
perfect,
done.
perfectly
Yeah,
done, perfect choice.
and even the perfect choice of like what movie was it that they had playing in the hotel, they kind of like played off then at the end of like Laura's
Yeah,
character like quoting the movie.
the, that wasn't was it Shane? Was it?
I, I think it was. I think it was
Shane. Yeah.
Yeah. But yeah, like
Yeah. Perfect. Like,
talking about like
really
doing
well
like the
done.
loaded gun thing of like, hey, you showed that movie partway through so that you could bring it back at the end. Like,
Yeah.
oh man, like so many things about that movie were so well. Even like the things that they played off for a joke, like the kid's cutting his beard to make him look like
Like the iconic
the iconic.
comic
Yeah,
weird beard. Yeah.
yeah, like they did that
I
throughout.
remember those. I was thinking about that. It was a silly thought, but like even the scissors they used. There was one
Yeah,
pair of scissors shaped like a bird. I remember my grandparents had a scissor like that, and I was fascinated by it. Like I would always like want to
yeah. But
not play with them, but
I always
like
enjoyed
you
those
know,
nods. Like in the first X-Men movie when he's like wearing the leather and he's like, they're like, what would you want? Like yellow spandex?
yeah.
Like,
The nods to the
yeah,
like the self-aware,
yeah.
to the
Well, like,
source
well,
material.
they were very
Yep.
self-aware, even with just like, hey, we're not gonna give him the like hood, but make his hair do this.
Yep. And I appreciate when it's like self-aware, they can even poke a little fun, but it's not
Yeah.
like disrespectful or disparaging of the
No,
source
no, no.
material.
It was
There's some
always honoring the
yeah,
source material of
yeah.
like,
There's some movies that miss the tone that or like they double down too much on,
yeah,
what they expected audiences to feel, and it ended up making it worse because they were
yeah.
just busting on,
It,
hey, you don't even respect your own characters, you're busting on your own. So
right.
I felt that like the not again to bust on it, making shows is really hard, and there's some
Hmm.
ideas that worked okay, but like Marvel's Iron Fist, I felt like they were a
Yeah.
little too, they busted too much on what they thought audiences would think the story was silly, and they treated it as such, and it made the story silly. Like
Yeah.
they tried to make it darker, and they tried to be self-aware, but it ended up
Instead of
like
taking
you're
it
not respecting your
seriously.
source
Yeah.
material. Yeah, the source material is great. There's other like graphic novel, like I wasn't real familiar with that character, but like people I knew, like friends, were
Yeah.
telling me about like some of the source material is awesome. Like he punches a dragon's heart to get that power. Like the dragon lets him. The dragon like teaches
Yeah.
him and helps him ascend to this kind of And he's like a wise in the comics. I can maybe understand why they were trying to go a different direction with him, like try to make him like kind of zenned out. But it came off like it didn't come
Yeah.
off well. And they he because his
Yeah.
character in the books is
And
kind
I
of not dissimilar to like Spider-Man, like a
yeah.
wisecracking, or Deadpool, like a wisecracker. But yeah,
And I
so,
think
yeah,
that's
they didn't respect the source material. Logan very much did,
depending
but made
on
it its own thing.
the series, depending on like the superheroes and stuff like that. Like I thought X-Men as well as Christopher Nolan's Batman were so great because they were grounded in like reality of
Mhm.
like we're gonna ground these.
Yes,
Um,
yeah, exactly.
but yeah, so that's mine. I love
Yeah.
Wolverine. Will always love him.
Hmm.
But so thank you, your listener, for joining. I'm imagining that the listener is Jeff Goldblum from the Daryl.
From
He's
Daryl.
just clicking refresh the Thor Ragnarok like
Yes,
Daryl shorts
yes.
that they did
Okay, yeah,
of
yeah,
like him as the Grandmaster clicking refresh on YouTube of like
yeah,
2 views, 2 views.
Yep.
So
So thank you, Jeff Goldblum, for
yes,
watching.
yep.
Thank you, sir.
But yeah, if there's any movies or characters that anyone for some reason that's watching us would like us to discuss or wants to throw out of like, hey, I love this character and why, and like you should watch this.
Mhm.
Go ahead and give us suggestions.
Yeah, please recommendations, even
Yeah,
just to watch. We love film. We love stories.
yeah.
We probably
We
in the
love
future might
TV
wrap.
shows as well, so we'll
Yeah,
we'll
we'll
talk
probably
about
wrap
TV
about
shows and
TV, maybe even expand into books,
yeah,
some video games. But yeah, thank you, Chris.
yep.
Thank you all.
Thank you, Zach.
Word. Maybe we'll invent a sign off at some point.
Yeah.
But for now, peace.
Peace.